Oh, you're staying there. Me last week. Max, you're going to say, I'm going to leave them up.
Late, I might, sorry. Morena, everyone. Hey, before the council meeting gets underway, we've just got a couple of introductions to be made with some wonderful new staff members. So I'll hand over to Mark and Nadia to make the introductions. Thank you, Emma. Yeah, and it wasn't a test. Awesome. Thanks, Emma. Thanks, Nikki. It's been wonderful having you on our team.
So from my perspective, I'll just add a few words through you, Your Worship. So you'll see a lot of both Nikki and Emma as we commence the long-term plan process for our next LTP, which we are starting today with a workshop setting our sort of thinking about our strategic direction. But in terms of asset management and obviously engagement with our community, two really important points. So these are new roles that have come out of the realignment process that council allocated funding for in the current long-term plan. So it's great to see those roles being filled.
Testing. Are you there, Day?
Yes, we can, Roy.
Oh, right. I can hear you, Cassidy. So thank you.
Well, good. Morena tātou. So Day, I take it we're all connected, good to go. Welcome Councillor Johnson via a faraway screen in a caravan. Welcome Liz. Tanya mentioned that some ladies sitting in the gallery do their knitting, so please feel free. And welcome to the press, councillors and staff. So if I could hand over to Cassidy to begin with an opening prayer, please.
Ka pai a tēnā tātou, o tira koutou ko whakaroi ka mai nei, I tēnei ate mihi ane kia koutou ngā maniwhiri. Kei noi tātou, he unuhanga ānuku, he unuhanga ārangi, he māreretanga, he māunutanga, ko te pau kātū, he pau waha te pau, he pau wehe te pau. Ko wehe atu te pau ki tuo pai kia hiua mai ko te ao mārama. Kia māra mai I runga, kia māra mai I raro, kia māra mai I waho, kia māra mai I roto. Kia ti, kia ho, kia ti aho mai I roto. Ti toko te ao mārama. Whano, whanake tū mai te toki, haumie, hui e, tae ki e. Kia ora tātou.
Kia ora, thanks Cassidy. And now I'll pass over to Councillor Williams to give the morning words of wisdom. Kia ora.
Thank you, Your Worship. In view of the circumstances, I've been reading a really interesting book called The Big Ones, How Natural Disasters Have Shaped Us and What We Can Do About Them. First published in 2018, but it's quite prophetic, some of the things that she writes about. The author's Dr. Lucy Jones. She's a seismologist, or has been for the US Geological Survey for 33 years, and most recently as the science advisor for risk reduction. She says the future, it ends her book, that the future is largely unknowable. We can see patterns and assess likelihoods, but time travels in only one direction. We cannot know which of the Earth's many cities and our communities will experience their big one in our lifetimes, but we can say with confidence that it will happen somewhere. And when it does, in our globally connected world, we will all participate. We will share in the distress of the victims as information is fed over our phones and computers. We will seek out a reason that might spare us from suffering the same fate. We will, in other words, experience the fear that stems from randomness. But we can acknowledge these impulses in ourselves and those around us and choose to move beyond them. We can acknowledge our deep-seated instinctual responses to disaster, but draw instead from our enormous capacities for empathy, our willingness to help. We can use what we now know to help those most hurt by the disaster and to prevent damage in the ones to come. Natural disasters strike us down together, and it is together that we will get back on our feet. The message from her dedication at the front of the book is what I think our reflection for us is. It was to the city planners, building officials, and others who love their communities. And work every day to prevent future natural disasters from becoming human catastrophes.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, very relevant at the moment. And I'd just like to add my own condolences to those who have lost whānau, and my thoughts out of those who have lost their businesses, their livelihoods across the affected parts of Aotearoa, and also further afield, my thoughts to the people of Turkey and Syria with what they've gone through over the last week as well. So not the most pleasant of places to be in at the moment, but it makes us all eternally grateful for what we have. Apologies, we do have a couple this morning. We have an apology from Councillor Willison and another one from Councillor Tamaki. So I'd like to move those apologies be accepted. Second to Councillor Jeffries. All in favour? Carried, thank you. No late items in the agenda, imagine. Thank you. Are there any agenda items that any councillors feel need to declare a conflict of interest? Thank you. Moving on. Public forum. I believe Councillor Jeffries, you're speaking on behalf of one of our residents.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Good morning, councillors. Yes, I've been in discussions with David and Alison Sellers about some concerns that they had about work planned for Turitea Road. I'm pleased to say that that's been resolved satisfactorily. However, David did ask if I could read this. He can't be here today, but read this on behalf of him and Alison. The recent devastation to communities from extreme rain events has got me thinking about the vulnerability of Ōtorohanga town from flooding of the Waipa River. Between cyclones Hale and Gabrielle was another unnamed rain event between the 27th and the 30th of January that delivered more rain at Honakiwi, where I live, 230 millimetres, than either of the cyclones. It did more damage too. During that event, the council Facebook page said that the council was monitoring the Waipa River flood banks and closed the flood bank walkway. I'm curious to know what the rainfall event assumptions were in the late 1950s that determined the height and width of the stop banks that should be built. How valid are those assumptions now? The stop banks are clearly designed to withstand certain river depths and flows. What is the relationship between those depths and flows and any given amount of rainfall? This will be a complex relationship with the period over which the rain is received being a factor, and importantly, the degree of saturation of catchment soils from previous rainfall. Are our stop banks able to withstand catchment-wide rainfall of 250 millimetres, 450 millimetres rain, 550 millimetres of rain? During Cyclone Gabrielle, the Gisborne Ranges received 488 millimetres of rain, the Hawke's Bay Ranges 337 millimetres. I would like to know, is this information known by the council? If so, what are the answers to my questions? And if not, what is the council going to do to ensure that these questions can be answered? And that's signed by David Sellers.
Thank you, Councillor. Yeah, look, they're all absolutely relevant questions, and certainly what's happened across the country has brought that to the front of mind, and certainly my own mind has been asking a similar question. I'm not going to put any council staff on the line at the moment, but I'm sure as a consequence of this event and the devastation across the country, regional council, our staff will be having conversations with regional council in terms of what their modelling is, because I think we need the assurance as councils as well that we can talk with a level of confidence further down the track should there be an extreme weather event, and we know what we're in for, and I suppose what mitigation is in place to ensure that the stop banks aren't inundated. And I think if we look at the devastation where the stop banks in this last event have been breached and the flood levels have risen so quickly, that is where the real danger is. So yes, good questions by the sellers, and I thank them for that. But obviously we don't have the answers at the moment, but I'm sure this investigation will go into it because we as councillors want that confidence. So thank you. Right, moving on to the confirmation of minutes of the Ōtorohanga District Council dated 14th December 2022. Do I have a mover and a seconder for those, please? Move Councillor Hughes, second Councillor Dow. Are there any matters arising from those minutes?
Yes. Oh, thank you, Worship. Yes, I've just got a couple of questions and a couple of points of clarification. Item 11 in those minutes of the 2021-22 annual report. One to the third paragraph, page 6, I think it is. Yep.
The agenda.
Doesn't give it to me, sorry.
Okay, yep.
I just wanted to clarify for the councillors that the effect of the valuations that were undertaken last year for our annual report for the three waters in particular, where our asset values increased by something like $60 million. There was a suggestion made that that was going to impact on the level of rating for this year because we need to fund the depreciation on the increased value of those assets. Talking with DIA last week, they're pretty relaxed about us not doing that. That there is perhaps, they agree that there's no point in having a rate increase just to increase depreciation reserves, which will then in 12 months time just form part of the net debt which is going over to them anyway. So it just seems a pointless exercise. So I think I just wanted to make the point that if we're looking at our budgets for this year, we can comfortably look at rating for existing depreciation levels. Okay.
Yes, thanks, Scott.
Through you, Worship, just to be clear, on Three Waters assets only.
Thank you. Any other items, Councillor Jeffries?
It was really just to do with the KWT and the Ōtorohanga rural concept plans, which I'm quite happy to leave till Ross's presentation. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other matters, councillors? Okay, moving on to receipt of the minutes of the Ōtorohanga Community Board dated 7th February. Do I move on a seconder for those? Move Councillor Christensen, second Councillor Dow, all in favour? Against? Carried, thank you. Moving on to receipt of the minutes of the Kawhia Community Board dated 2nd of February 2023. Move on a second for those. Move Councillor Jeffries, second Councillor Williams, all in favour? Against? Carried, thank you. Oh, sorry.
That's all right. Can I just ask a question, Your Worship? Just want to say thank you to the staff for introducing this resolution register that's now coming attached to I assume to not only the community board but the Ōtorohanga Community Board and council as well. But just a point of clarification on that, are we saying here that the only items that are going to appear on that register have to be done by way of a resolution, previous resolution? Is that right?
Yeah, through you, Your Worship, yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just that I'm just a little bit concerned that, and I'm sure you know what I'm talking about here, that some of the discussions that we have, particularly at Kawhia, do tend to sort of cover a wide range of subjects. Not all of them include a resolution.
Mhm.
So we could end up with a meeting filled with resolutions. Is that what we want?
No, it isn't. And I think it's a nice way to describe the discussion that happens at the board meeting, Councillor Jeffries. Thank you. I think we need to find a way to capture the items that come up in that part of the meeting, which I think Chairman Jeff Good is going to probably look at doing that in a bit of a different way, but capture those concerns either through an RFS system, or the board agrees that it's a priority for them and that we can go away and kind of work on it. So yeah, I think we just need to probably shape that up a bit better. And I know that that Jeff is talked to Andrew and Kaya about how that can happen. So yeah, all right.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 19, Ōtorohanga Town Concept Plan, implementation. Sorry, did I skip over that? Sorry. I conveniently skipped over my verbal report, and that is because it's absent. There wasn't a lot going on in January as a consequence of obviously the shutdown of central government and what was going on within council and staff moving on. So been to a couple of community board meetings. We're obviously at workshop, and it's been, I won't say a slow start to the year, but building into it. So there's not a lot to report at this point. So rather than going down with about 20 bullet points of what I've been up to, that's pretty much covers it. So I won't even ask for that to be moved or any questions. Now I'll move on to item 19, the Ōtorohanga Town Concept Plan. Did I miss that as well? Yeah,
Did it do what's
the receipt of minutes, yeah, I did, yeah. And you moved it, I
So
seconded.
you moved it. And Councillor
No.
Dow seconded it. And Councillor Hughes, for the council minutes, and Councillor Dow, seconded it. For the council minutes, so yeah, all done.
All good, comfortable? Ross, over to you.
Morena Koto, thank you, Your Worship, councillors. What I'm just handing around there is a printed version of the implementation plan that was copied in your agenda. It might be a slightly easier version to read, but while it's making its way around, I'll just provide a bit of context for this item. So you'll recall that in October last year, those of you who are on council, was the adoption of the Ōtorohanga Town Concept Plan together with an action plan. That action plan contained close to 100 actions. So I think everyone involved in the project, including council and community board members who ultimately oversaw its adoption, recognised that that was a fairly ambitious program of work. And if we think about the duration of the plan being 30 years, it's probably a reasonably good balance. So what you have is you've got two copies. One is the primary action plan, and the other is the a two-page. Sorry, you've got a two-page primary action plan and a one-page partners plan. Maybe I'll pause while that's going around.
Has everybody got their pieces? Sorry, Dave, I actually had water. I couldn't see it behind the screen. Sorry, I was just making sure we're all in check here.
Yep.
So there's two stapled together and one single one, is that
That's
correct?
it. So you'll have one that's got 4 pages or 4 sides, and then one that should be a single
Okay,
side.
thank you.
And I'll get to those in a moment. So just to recap, Ōtorohanga Town Concept Plan adopted in October, nearly 100 actions spread over 30 years. Looking at the first 3 years of that action plan, which corresponds to the $2.1 million that council signalled in the long-term plan, $700,000 per annum to help implement the plan. We looked at that first 3-year period. There are 49 actions across that period. Most of those are council owned and led. 15 of those are anticipated to be led by council partners, but supported by council. So having a look at that 49 action program over 3 years, it just simply wasn't possible with the people resource that's available both in council and we anticipate within our partner organisations to kick off all of those actions in the first year. So we've gone through a triaging exercise, and that's involved discussions with partner organisations as well as leadership team and members of staff that were involved in the town concept plan project itself. And we've identified 18 actions. Some of those are still within our partner organisation gambit, and we're having ongoing discussions with them around that. So in the documents that have been circulated, we've highlighted that triaging process. Anything with a 1 is identified as year 1 priority, 2, year 2, 3, year 3. So no doubt there'll be some discussion around the process that we've been through, and particularly what's now presented for your consideration. I'll just add that the key to delivering on whatever number of prioritised projects that we end up, and what those projects are, is still a function of resourcing. So we've identified, and it's shown in the program or the plan as ODC, there is someone or a position in this organisation that will lead that project. Some yet don't have a warm body in those roles, and we acknowledge that, and we'll be looking at that in terms of how we give a effect to that, where they are priority one initiatives. Some of those initiatives also involve key partners such as Waka Kotahi, and we're working to engage with them on those projects, bearing in mind, of course, that they're also, like the rest of Aotearoa, focusing their resources on those areas that are most significantly affected. And then perhaps before I invite questions, the other element of the resourcing is looking at program coordination. So you'll see in the report there is reference to that, and we've taken, or I've taken, an educated estimate around the level of the program budget that would appropriately be accorded to program coordination and oversight. And I'm sure our chief executive may want to add something to the conversation before we take questions.
I'm sure she does.
Just wanted to say a couple of things, and I'm not sure whether you covered this through your worship, but because I was doing some minute taking. But part of the process around determining whether we put a 1, 2, or 3 next to these projects was whether that we had already provided for them, or they aligned with something that was already in the long-term plan. So if I take reserve management plans as an example, we've already identified that in our long-term plan as a priority to bring our parks and open spaces to life, and do some work there. The appointment of Jared into that role was part of the realignment, and so making sure that we've put that, given that the priority that it kind of needs to align with the long-term plan was really important to us. So that's just an example there. And the second thing I'd say is around resourcing. Yes, we have, we're recommending to council that we have a program coordinator in place on council's behalf, but we also acknowledge that we've got super stretched partner organisations, and we would be communicating with them around the resourcing that they may need in their organisations, and if necessary, we would utilise some of the budget that council's put aside for implementing this to boost their capacity as well. There's no point in putting an organisation's name next to some projects and then they can't deliver because they are stretched with their resourcing as well. So just make those 2 points.
Thanks, Jana. That's kind of an important part. Certainly it's a concern that's been raised by one of the councillors leading up to this. So yeah, really important that, as you said, if we've got a name next to something, that they can actually perform the task at hand. And if that, on that note, is I suppose at this point we're talking the organisation closest to home being ODDB. Has that been expressed to them already that the support will be there if needed?
Through your worship, I'm not actually sure whether that conversation's happened yet or not. I think we're bringing this to you first and getting sign off. I know that we have. I think we've talked to them about this, but I'll hand over to Ross and or Nadia to talk to that.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Nadia may wish to add, but we've been in conversation. They're aware of the projects. Yeah, I'm not sure there's much more we can add until there's a level of comfort around where the relative priority falls, and then we'll be back to those organisations for conversations.
Thanks,
along
Ross.
the line.
Sorry. Thanks, Ross. Just for further clarification, like you're saying, 1, 2, 3 is years 1, 2, 3, and then at the top you've got priorities high, medium, low, which so basically the low priority is year 3. Is that direct correlation with that?
Yes,
Okay, cool.
yes.
And that could shift according to resources and capacity. Yeah. So there's.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And other circumstances that may change.
Yeah.
And just adding to what the Chief Executive mentioned, that there are some projects also that have a number of stages to them. So we've looked at those as well and thought, well, relative to the amount of work that's required, and the time frame to advance those, some of those are better off advanced at this stage where there's a feasibility or a scoping type exercise to determine what the nature of the actual project to be delivered might be.
I think through you, Your Worship, one of the things that will be important that we may wish to discuss today or not is the reporting back frequency, so that both the Ōtorohanga Community Board and you get a sense of, you know, the progress. It's commentary around what things might be maybe lagging behind in terms of timeframes and reasons why, other projects that may well be able to be advanced, and the reasons why. So that I think it's important that we have a reporting timeframe. I'm not sure whether Ross and Nadia have given any thought to that.
So if it's not in the report, the thinking was at least quarterly. And some of those projects have their own process that could engage or involve engagement with the community or parts of the community that then require, you know, direction and decision making from council. So there's kind of the program view, which will come back quarterly, and then the individual projects will have their own process and timeframes that we'll need to have regard to. And council will be governing both elements of that.
Awesome, thank you. Because as you well know, all the stakeholders here, they certainly want to know what's going on, that it doesn't just fall over. So we appreciate that.
Can I just add, picking up Councillor Jeffrey's public forum comment on behalf of the sellers, that's a priority 1 project as we've presented the plan to you today, the program to you today.
Is it back to me, Ross, or anything further to add with priorities?
Open to questions.
Councillor Dow.
Ross, what does CCXACA mean? It's on for the CCTV cameras under B. What's that abbreviation for? Is that meant to be?
Sorry, can you tell me the road?
Column B,
Yep.
number 66, and then it's got, because the others have got building, some's got building maintenance, some's operational, but there's got CCXCA. What does that mean? What's that abbreviation for?
Oh, I'm not sure.
I'm not either. So it's not a dumb question.
No, it's not.
On row 67, column B, there's some little weird kind of glitchy thing happened.
A glitch in the matrix.
Okay, so does that mean it's investigated or something? I'm trying to think what C means. Because you fellas do use acronyms quite a lot, so.
So it is a building and maintenance project. So it's install, operate and maintain.
And so on that, does that go to the public to see if they actually want them to begin with? But I don't know, the police want them, but a lot of public don't want cameras around town, so does that happen? Because it wasn't in the town.
Nadia might like to speak to that because she's been working with the ODB on this project.
Yes,
place.
thank you. Through you, Your Worship, there is a strong desire from the business community to have cameras through town with the increase in crime that is being felt throughout the region, but also locally.
And just add to that, the police are certainly aware around privacy issues when you get into the residential areas, that you can't have cameras pointing at houses and so on. So it is all about the business. community, and also the entrances and exits of town. So if there's something happening, you can actually see license plates of vehicles coming in and leaving.
The trouble is the police don't come and look at the camera footage that you've got people doing crimes. So
Like it could be.
that's enough. I really understand this is just the town plan, but I kind of thought it was from the town plan. I don't think this camera's been in that plan. I thought people safety wasn't in that. Yeah.
They were identified through our consultation and engagement process. Security was identified and safety was identified as a high priority. So we know that different people have different view on cameras. Would we go out and ask the wider public about them? Probably not. We're going to put them in public spaces. So I guess, yeah, you either come into the public space knowing there's cameras, or you go and find another set of shops or something, that don't have them, I suppose. Councillor.
Councillor Pez, I'll go Councillor Prendergast and then you, Councillor Johnson. So you're not forgotten.
Thank you. Through you, Your Worship, Ōtorohanga community has got cameras. You cannot enter or leave without being photographed, your vehicle photographed. Police use it a lot, and I think it's fair to say, I've got no statistical evidence to back it up, but crimes are just not happening as often. And we've got them on their local hall at the school, and the whole community is very pleased with the result. And the first thing the police do is go to those cameras because they've got direct access. It's been wonderful. Yes. Yes, and for us too, you have to understand that isolation is an issue.
Yeah.
And that it's helpful.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Johnson.
Kia ora, everybody. Just a question, Ross, on the report. I'm just looking at the top of page 4, 6.4. I'm just trying to work out in my own mind how the amount of money is that's for the town concept plan implementation, but what about the rural and kawhia concept plans? That'll be an additional workload. Are we doing this again for that in another, or when that concept plan is done, or how does that fit into the financial allocation here?
Good question. Through Your Worship, so the total budget applies to the 3 concept plans. So Ōtorohanga being first out of the gate gets I guess in year 1 the implementation program funded solely, and then in years 2 and 3 we will have 3 implementation plans, 1 for each of the concept plans. At this stage, my suggestion is because we're focusing on the priority 1 projects, we then cast our net a little wider with the implementation or action plans coming from the other 2 concept plans, and then look at an overall priority for the projects. But you might decide as a council that the Kawhia, Aotea and Ōtorohanga rural area plans might have priority in terms of the second year budget funding, and then move on to the 3rd year. So remember that this budget is up until June 30 this year, so that is year 1. So and the program for the other 2 concept plans has those plans before council for adoption before the end of October.
Yeah, so Ross, is in terms of staff capability, is it envisaged that 1 staff member would be doing all 3 plans, or will we need to be hiring more to cover those work streams?
Just through you, Your Worship. So Ross will stay in a program manager role. for the both the creation and the delivery of the town concept plans, all three. And then the resourcing that we envisage here would sit under under him, I guess, and be arms and legs to be able to deliver some of these projects alongside our partners and our internal managers. If we assess that that's not enough and we need some more, we can always bring a report back to council and look at, you know, how we're moving along, etc. So I think, you know, it's kind of going to take a village, I guess, to get these plans going in terms of implementation, but we need to have someone, in this case, a couple of people, Ross plus one other, with a responsibility for keeping the program moving and touching base with all those managers. So we can always reassess how we're going and whether we need more.
So on that, Tanya, is that part B of the staff recommendation, acknowledge the need to appoint a program coordinator to oversee the delivery? Is that in addition to yourself then, Ross?
Yes, because Ross won't spend all his 100% of his time on this.
Cool, thank you. Any further questions, councillors? Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Worship. Through you, Ross. Probably a dumb question too, but I noticed that on the left-hand column, the numbers don't run in sequence, so we're not hiding anything in there.
Another very good question, and there was a wee note in the descriptor of the attachment, but so be looking at it, I've hidden through the program those actions that are beyond year 3. So what you have is all 97 actions in the program, and I've just condensed it so you're looking at years 1 to 3.
Thank you. Okay. Yes, that's. And just one further question, Ross, which I've raised with you previously. I'm just interested on these community advisory groups that have been formed, and I'm thinking in particular for Kawhia, Aotea, and for the Ōtorohanga Rural. If somebody has indicated that they're interested in standing or being involved with those, and then there is a selection process, and just say for argument's sake, it's not likely to happen, but just say if it did, we had a large number of people who'd indicated an interest, and we've got to go through and actually sort out from that list who we would like to see on that group, and and not, put it bluntly. So how do we do that diplomatically without offending the people who've put their names forward and for some reason or other are no longer considered for the groups? I'm struggling a little bit with that one.
Through your worship, I'm not sure I'm the right person to answer the question. I guess your role as elected members is to engage with your communities, and your knowledge of people in your communities gives you a better, I guess, handle on who in your communities you think would be well suited to the advisory group. Bearing in mind, this is an open, engaging process, so there is an opportunity for everyone to be involved in terms of shaping these plans in their particular areas of the district. I think on the one hand, having you collectively and through other means, people being put forward as nominees to the process. The reality is we can't have 50 people on an advisory group. It doesn't, it just won't work. So there would need to be some criteria or process, bearing in mind that what we're looking for, obviously people who are keen to be involved and have the skills to work together as a team, can bring their community issues, opportunities and challenges forward, discuss those in a collaborative manner, but we also want those advisory groups to be representative of the communities that those concept plans are going to be covering. So I'm not giving you a straight answer, but there's a process that we will need to follow, and both the board and the council will need to be involved in signing off on the advisory group.
I mean, I think we'll find through you, Your Worship, I mean, hopefully it's not kind of 50 people, but say if we were looking for 10 people and we end up with, I don't know, 15 names, usually people drop off. So you could probably take all of the people that have put their name forward if the board and council are of a mind to. And what we found with the OTCP is we had people just through life circumstances actually say, oops, I can't do this anymore. And so we found that we ended up with, a kind of more manageable type number. So yeah, but if it's 50, then we're in trouble.
Yeah, I guess, thank you for that. Thanks for your explanation, Ross. I guess the concern for me mainly was around the rural side of things, where we're looking at the rural wards, and so I don't know who the appropriate people could be or would be from other wards. I've got ideas for the Carfair area, but so does that mean then that the rural councillors perhaps need to get together at some stage and decide who's going to be on? Okay, so that's that's going to happen. Yep. Okay, that's good.
Thank you, councillor. I'll just go to councillor Christensen first.
Through you, Worship, I was just double checking that someone from the ODVB will be invited to be on part of those advisory groups too, because ODVB is a district-wide board. So it's just a check, really.
Yes.
Right, thank you, councillor Prendergast.
Oh, just through you, Your Worship, just to back up Kit's conversation. Like, I've already got a list of names that I think would be suitable people to approach. I haven't approached them yet, so I guess at some stage we'll be informed of the process and on how you want that interaction.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? If not, Ross, thanks very much. A really comprehensive and report, and a lot of work has gone into this. So thank you. Prioritisation is not easy when you're looking at capacity and seeing what I suppose the needs and desires are of the community. So thank you very much. We've got the staff recommendation that Ōtorohanga District Council confirm the Ōtorohanga Town Concept Plan Prioritised Action Plan, noting the budget cap of 700,000 for 2023, and that each action will be scoped, costed, and appropriate communication engagement plan developed. In part, B, acknowledge the need to appoint a program coordinator to oversee the delivery of the action plan, with the chief executive authorised to make that appointment. I'd like to move that. Do I have a seconder? Seconder, councillor Prendergast. All in favour? Against?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. Against? Carried. I don't forget about you, councillor Johnson. It just seemed a bit funny coming out of the wings. Okay, if we'll move on to item 20, the resource management and 3 water reforms and future for local government review. Are you leading that, Ross?
Yes, I'll certainly kick off, and if there are any questions, we've got Andrew and Mark here around 3 waters and the resource management. Having said that, the reform program deadline has meant we've needed to submit the make the submissions last week, end of last week. That was even with an extension granted. So the workshop session last week canvassed both the draft submissions for these 2 reforms. They've gone in. You've asked to be heard in support of your submission. We've had inquiries back around options for that, so we'll continue to work with the select committee representatives and you, Worship, and others around availability and timing.
Ross, just looking at that, like I couldn't believe when I saw the dates put forward. A, can they actually read the submissions in the time before the hearing them? Just seems absolutely absurd, and I'm actually not available to present. So if we still want to present for those, yeah, whether council is up for it, then that would be great because I'm not available. But I think it's absolutely, it's a bit appalling really that, we're talking about it one week and then next week we're hearing it. So, hey, it just seems like it's rushed through without a lot of consideration for the time frames. So if we've got someone like sort of the councillor Dow that's interested, then we're up for it. So that's a conversation to be had with staff between yourselves and elected members.
Thank you, Worship. So essentially, we're asking for formal endorsement or confirmation of those submissions as they've been lodged. So that moves us on to the review into the future of local government. So in October of last year, the independent panel released a report, and they've been around the country to facilitate conversations and discussion and invite feedback. So prior to Christmas, I think we had one workshop discussion around the framework and those the 5 shifts and the 10 or 11 areas of focus that the review panel had structured their report on. On the back of that discussion and further feedback from our members and within the sector, the draft submission before you today incorporates that feedback, and it's been structured along the lines of the report framework.
Page 66 of your agenda.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm scrolling through trying to get to. Yep. Ross, just on that submission, I mean, it's just asking. I see a man wearing a kilt at the far end of the table, and there's a lot of reference back to the Scottish model.
Mm.
Can you please talk to that, please?
Okay, so and I guess in a nutshell, the reforms that have been taking place in Scotland, and I'll talk about resource management equivalent as well as community planning, are very much around engaging public service organisations collectively with a focus on improving wellbeing in communities. And so in Scotland, they define communities as each of the 32 council areas, and then within each of those council areas, where there are areas of higher or greater inequality, there's a mechanism to enable a more detailed level of planning. So essentially, the councils are leading the planning processes in their districts. So whether it's resource management, which has a kind of a development spatial plan component, and then a local plan placemaking. So think Ōtorohanga, Kawhia, Aotea, rural areas. There's that component. On the other side, community planning, you've got all of these public service agencies and community organisations coming together to develop what I would say is a long-term plan. That's my words. They use different language. A long-term plan to address and improve wellbeing in their communities. And if there are pockets in those communities that need further resource and commitment and action, then there's a plan that's developed for them. So some Scottish councils have their LTP equivalent, their spatial plan equivalent, some placemaking plans, concept plans, and locality plans that are community-based with a specific focus on wellbeing. So I think in between the submissions, I've used the analogy of a coin. So you've got one side of the coin is the resource management side, and on the other side, you've got the community planning side, and that's where the resourcing commitment comes in, just like our long-term plan, except for us. We're working with our communities, and it's not easy to engage with central government or other public sector agencies around, you know, the needs and aspirations of our communities and well-being. for a variety of reasons, many of which are presented in the submission. So we've got, different planning horizons, different priority setting arrangements, different budgeting model, different timeframes, the whole 9 yards. And at the heart, I guess, of the Scottish planning model in its wider sense is data. So the community planning in Scotland is evidence-based. So you have the National Health Service, Scottish branch and or division, and the local council presenting a strategic needs or compiling a strategic needs analysis at a council and community level. So it's quite challenging for us here to be able to get a lot of that data at a district level or an Ōtorohanga level. So,
look, we're obviously looking at or endeavouring to transition from a real centralised approach here in the delivery of a lot of these services. What was the story of Scotland before that? Was it a similar sort of model, or were they already reasonably localised or regionalised in their delivery of programs?
Well, there was a major reform in the mid-90s. So there were more councils. There were 2 levels of local government, much the same as we have here. So they had regional councils or councils that spanned a broader geographic area with different functions. So the 32 councils in Scotland now are all unitary authorities. Okay, so there's 5.5 million people in Scotland, 32 unitary councils, but with that unitary council structure comes a significant amount of service delivery that is currently delivered in New Zealand centrally, some of it's regional, most of it centrally. So in Scotland, they look after housing across the board, they look after education across the board, they look after care, so aged care and care generally across the board, as well as a number of other functions.
How many staff in some of those councils?
So a mid-sized council in Scotland that has it's sort of part of the wider Glasgow metropolitan area, so quite urban, right down to in its southern side, quite rural with villages and so on. 18,000 employees for that council.
Okay.
So it's all focused, and it's all focused and all coordinated at the district level.
So just on that, I'm just thinking about that'll be Ōtorohanga, Waipa, Watomo. If you looked at that sort of 30 odd councils, this would probably be the equivalent size to that. And maybe 500 staff across the 3 councils currently. Yeah, right. So 18,000. Has it become what we see as the issue of central government that becomes cumbersome and somewhat clunky in terms of the delivery of service with that many staff?
Oh, my time in Scotland and the amount of time I was able to connect with both senior council staff and members of the Scottish government in this area. I mean, that was kind of 4 days. So I've got a reasonable knowledge, but there's some detail that I'm unfamiliar with. But the other thing, if I may, Worship, that I think is a strength of the Scottish model is outcomes and priorities are developed from a kind of bottom up and top down, and then nationalised. So there is one national performance framework, as far as I can see, for Scotland, and those outcomes, which are aligned to sustainable development goals as well, cascade down. So essentially, the planning at a district level is how do we localise and give effect to the priorities that are signalled at a national level. So housing is a priority at a national level. What that looks like at a district level and a community level can be quite different. So that's how you get that kind of localism and that subsidiarity principle playing through. That's very much central in the independent panel's draft report.
Yeah, and that they're certainly reading through the submission. That's part that's appealing, is seeing what the local issues are and then obviously reaching up with funding accordingly to what your needs are. Councillors, any questions of us at this point? Councillor Jeffries?
Thanks, Your Worship. Yes, it's not so much a question, it's just I just wanted to endorse the comment that you made that from my perspective, I'm very concerned about the number of the time deadlines that have been imposed by central government on local government and our reliance we're placing on staff, which we're very grateful for. But our reliance on staff and consultants to actually prepare council submissions with not a lot of input from elected members, other than perhaps reviewing and so on. I don't think it's good enough, and I hope that if you're going down to make the submission, or that you actually really stress that point. It's been made in the written submission, but I think probably we need to really ram it home to these guys that it's just not good enough, and what they expect from councils at the moment, I think, is being unreasonable. Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Jeffries. As you know, couldn't agree more. So, thanks, Ross. Suppose to see where that relationship was between the kilt and the submission. It's quite important, but I did like how that read, so very happy. Do any councillors feel there's any need for change to the submission on the draft report and the review into the future of local government?
Just one thing.
Sorry, councillor.
Sorry. Yeah, look, there's no changes needed as far as I can see, and the changes that we talked about at the workshop have been put in there. But I just not like to acknowledge all the work that Ross has put in. These are massive documents and need massive amount of time and work. I just want to thank you for that, Ross. You've done a great job.
Thank you. Can I just add, Your Worship, the Future for Local Government submission is a much easier submission to write from my perspective, being part of Ōtorohanga District Council, because many of the things that the independent panel are signalling are things that we have discussed, both this council and the previous council, particularly as part of the last long-term plan or the current long-term plan development. So in many respects, some of the transitions that the panel are flagging in the draft report are things that are inherent in our existing long-term plan. So I look forward to this afternoon's discussion on setting the strategic context for the next long-term plan.
Thanks, Ross. There's nothing further. We have the staff recommendation here that the Ōtorohanga District Council retrospectively confirmed the two submissions lodged in respect to one, the Natural and Build Environment Bill and Spatial Planning Bill, and the Water Services Legislation Bill and Water Services Economic Efficiency and Consumer Protection Bill. It all flows beautifully. Noting that the timing for submissions does not allow for Council the opportunity to formally consider and confirm these submissions prior to the closing date, and be confirmed subject to any changes to submissions on the draft report on the review and local into the future of local government. We'll move in a second for that. With Councillor Prendergast, second Councillor Jeffries, all in favour? Against?
Aye.
Carried. And obviously we'll be in discussion about talking to the hearings, the submissions on the natural and built environment and water services. Thank you. Cool. Thanks, Ross. Really appreciate it. And as Councillor Johnson said, thank you so much for the work that you put into it. Now we'll jump ahead a couple of items, councillors, to item 23, the Ōtorohanga Kiwi House Progress Report. Welcome, Joe. Welcome, Tim. And welcome, Graham. And the page number is... Sorry. 110, 102.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. So this report is part of the Kiwi House's requirement to report back to council in line with conditions of the loan. The Kiwi House this financial year ends end of May. So we're looking at 6 monthly reporting back. So the the update and reports are to the end of November. Just I guess a quick update from council's point of view. The Kiwi House have now drawn down page here, $1,485,248.66 off the $2 million loan. There was an advance of 500,000 just before Christmas on the 20th of December, and the Kiwi House will be looking to draw down the balance of the loan within the next couple of weeks. So I'm just effectively going to hand over to Joe and Tim, and then they can just, I guess, just quickly run through where things are at with the capital development and I guess in terms of visit numbers and things where things are now. So cool.
Awesome. Thanks, Graham. Over to you two. Well, when you push your button.
Okay, too much modern technology for me. Well, thank you first of all for having us here. It's great to actually be in the new council chambers and they look really fantastic. A couple of things that I really want to highlight and thank council for. The ability to get ahead with this project has meant that we were able to put in that Mahanui giant weta breeding hospital facility, the laboratory. And DOC have just released, but we've known but been embargoed on the fact that they're critically endangered. So their next step is extinction. And right now, the only way forward for them is the program that we're running. So really want to thank ODC for being the stakeholders and making that happen. And I hope you get lots of pats on the back and flowers for it, because it's pretty sad to think that an animal from our area is in the same category as kakapo and black stilt and black robins. So the work is underway in that facility and we're nearly finished zone 1. So zone 1 is all of our back of house area. We're just completing the final bit of mesh and landscaping for that, and we should have that open. We've been running part tours through it across the summer just as trials with visitors, but the whole zone will be open at the end of this month. So that's really neat. In terms of the zone 2, some kaka have unfortunately bred. It was very selfish of them and they're really cute but destructive. So we've put stage 2 on hold and moved straight into stage 3 and stage 4. So stage 4 is the new animal enrichment nutrition hub or centre, which you might know as the old Lockwood building. And again, really grateful to council for processing that consent really quickly for us to get that underway. And zone 3 is where we're clearing out the wetland area. Well, if it will ever stop raining, we'll dry that and clear that out. And we're building the Kia habitat and the brand new wetland facility. So those are our next items on the board. In terms of operating expenses, I'm very pleased to say tourism looks like it's back. Our January was looking really good. So it was on par in terms of visitor numbers with 2019's January, which I should point out isn't pre-COVID, that we were still struck by COVID at that point. But the figures from the Tourism Export Council look like they're running true, and that's what's on this. So it's great to be back and lively at the Kiwi House. I guess we came to answer any questions that might have come out of the report. Please direct the really financial ones to Tim. Is there anything you want to say, Tim?
Oh, just probably the January figures, the financial statements we gave you for the end of November. Because we're a seasonal business, we've just come into our peak period. And so we've changed, I think we're running a $44,000 loss to the end of November, but now to the end of January, we're running an $85,000 profit. So you can just see the impact of those visitor numbers. That's the type of business we're managing here. A lot of people coming in over Christmas, New Year through January, the holiday period. So, you know, that's had a significant effect on us and our operating and, you know, ability to manage things going forward. So, yeah, that's really encouraging. And although the development's a wee bit behind, we're encouraged with how we're going there too, I think. Maybe have you mentioned about the project manager we've got on board?
No.
Maybe.
Yeah, so we've recognised we need more capacity, and so we've built into the project 2 roles. We had one person, we were quietly killing them with too high a workload. So we've split that out into somebody that's focusing on running the build team and the scheduling across the whole park. We didn't have the level of programming to be able to do that, to be flexible. And so it's been great to bring in Jason McCarthy, who is a private, runs his own business and is hugely experienced in project management. And particularly for us, he's hugely experienced having worked running projects at Wellington Zoo for 4 years. So it's great to have that extra bit of capacity on the team. And that's meant that we were able to put another role in that looks at park-wide services. So that's around developing our electrical, all our infrastructure systems, security and data. So yeah, just to make sure that we are staying on target. We think we're 6 months behind, but we don't expect to go any further than that in terms of duration. And that really was COVID and weather.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. Look, good to see that profit. And obviously you said there's some unexpected expenses when it came to the wetlands and so on and drainage, Obviously you must have built in a wee bit in the contingency plan there for that, because like any project, you don't know what you're up against. I'm sure this has built quite a resilient Kiwi House manager over the last few years.
There's a lot of hair dyeing, yes.
Which is credit to you because, you know, if we look back a couple of years when we're looking at that loan, we weren't really sure what the future was, and it's really encouraging to see what the January figures have been. When we look at Thames Coromandel saying this is the worst January they've ever had for tourism, so fortunately we haven't borne the brunt of that because I'm not sure how we would have carried on otherwise. So in terms of where the Haworth predictions are, you're still really confident that you can follow through with those?
Yes, I think from our position, we were always looking at those as quite conservative figures, and we're very confident that we'll be able to pick up the second year of those projections as indicated in our report. Yeah.
And just looking at those, the TripAdvisor reviews, which there wasn't many of, and the Google reviews, which is the bigger number, Google reviews were considerably higher in terms of the scoring. With those other ones, the TripAdvisor, was there any particular thing that was raised? Was just the construction issues here?
We're always going to battle with what we've got currently in terms of facilities around Kiwi viewing.
Yeah.
And that's a core part of the new product we're developing. So extending that Kiwi viewing, because sometimes all 4 Kiwi on display just go to sleep at the same time, and that's frustrating for people.
Yeah.
And the Department of Conservation won't let me get a stick and raise them. Sorry, that's a little bit tongue in cheek. That's normally the cause of unhappiness, and we've got lots of management practices around that, but when we're chocker, it's really hard to reach every single person before they look out the door. We've been quite surprised at the level of feedback and pushback, given the fact that we have shut a big chunk of the park, and actually people have been incredibly understanding about that. But again, that's management practices, getting up in front, telling them what to expect before they buy their ticket. So yes, TripAdvisor's very much fallen off the wayside for us within the tourism industry. Google is now the primary method.
Okay, well, thanks for that. I needed the clarification as well. Just for my own mind, there's mention of the further nocturnal viewing house being built. Is that in addition to the current one? So they run concurrently, or sorry?
Yeah, so that's zone 6 and 7 in the project, where we basically rebuild that nocturnal house experience. At the same time, we will have the Kiwi Night Zone as we know it operating. Yeah.
Thank you. Looking forward to the tour. Councillors, any questions? Councillor Jeffries.
Oh, that's right. Thanks, Your Worship. I thought Roy might have had his. Look, it's great to see a really positive thing happening around there, and the fact that the visitor numbers, particularly the international ones, have picked up so much. I think there was always a little bit of concern right from the get-go, wasn't there, that the forecasted visitor numbers may not be achievable, but I think probably you're heading in the right direction there. So that's good news all around. So just congratulations on that, and you're confident that the 7.95, I think it was, total project cost is still achievable? You're not looking at any overruns at this stage?
Oh, you'll see on the page of my figures, the last page of it. Is it the second to last page? Third to last page. Yeah, we're up to about 8.7 million.
8.7, okay.
We expected some cost overruns.
Right, sorry.
And yeah, that's about, I guess, 10%. We had about an $8 million project, so we're up about 10% there. Right. But bear in mind, we haven't finalised costings on stages 6 and 7, which will be the expensive ones. So, that's still to come. But so far, we think we're on track.
Okay, sorry, I missed that one. And you're pretty confident about the 2023-24 projections there for funding from lotteries and NBIE, and that should be, you're pretty confident about getting those funds?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 2 million from NBIE and 1.6 from lotteries.
Sorry, I'm just catching up. Yes. Well, it's grant funding. We know that we've got good, solid applications, and bringing in the strategic grants program to support us in writing those has got us to a new level. It's taken some extra workload off me and a couple of people who are working in that area. What I should also add is that we've had fantastic partners coming on board from industry. So, for example, one of our biggest costs is joinery, glass joinery. So APL Limited have come in as partners to the project and are providing, let's just say, extremely reasonable rates. James Hardy have come on board with a range of cladding and internal lining material for us. And just on one product alone, they've saved us 100K. So that's the level of support the project is beginning to garner. People would like to be part of having their name involved, which is cool, as it should be. It's a great thing for the country, not just our area.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions, councillors?
Yes.
Councillor Hughes.
Through you, Your Worship. Congratulations, Joe and Tim, on the ongoing project. As far as admission costs are concerned, are they sustainable at this stage? You're looking in the future of increasing the cost of admission to the Kiwi House, or what's your plans there?
So the plan is to add, it's sort of like McDonald's. We're planning on upsizing, and by that I mean we're going to add a guided tour. So we're hoping to attract tour buses and give them a 45-minute experience where they get a guided tour with, a person highlighting the key things we want them to see, and we expect them to pay a premium for that. So that's going to be something completely new, and so that's the sort of thing we're going to have the ability to add once we're done. I mean, that's just one example. There'll be a whole lot more stuff in there too, but we also will over time increase our charges, and we base that on the Allworth report. There is a bit of pushback occasionally now with that price because we know we're a bit run down, but we know as well with what's coming that should be more palatable to pay more with a brand new facility. Yeah, so that's where I'm going.
Thanks, Tom. Cheers.
Thanks, Tim. With that, in terms of the conversation, because obviously the tourism or the buses haven't been a big component of the Kiwi House up until now. So is that discussions with THL or the support from Hamilton Waikato Tourism New Zealand? Where's that conversation go?
That's with Tourism Holdings Limited. So we're looking at continuing to develop multi-itinerary plans. So working with them and other cave operators to develop a tour through the area, and with any luck we can get it to the point where it's a carbon zero tour, which is another good selling point. It's with Hamilton Waikato Tourism, it's with Tourism New Zealand now, and we're also working with some inbound tour operators, so they're giving us direct feedback what they'd like.
So should closely align with Air New Zealand's desire to be the lowest carbon producing airline in the world.
Yeah, well, they just conveniently happen to match with our living building challenge that we're looking at. And we can already see parts of Nelson offering carbon zero itineraries and around our Tasman Park, and we feel we can achieve the same working with cave operators in Waitangi.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? If nothing further, we have a staff recommendation that the Ōtorohanga District Council receive the report titled Ōtorohanga Kiwi House Progress Report from Graham Bunn, Group Manager of Business Name. Moved and seconded, moved Councillor Christensen, seconded Councillor Dow. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Look, good luck. What can you say? So hopefully with your new project manager on board, it just gives you probably that the confidence that you do get to those end results when you need it. So thank you.
Brilliant, thank you.
Look forward to the tour too. Okay, councillors, we're going to move ahead to the Ōtorohanga District Development Board 6 monthly report, and that there is on page 126. So welcome Maureen, welcome Elle, welcome Nadia. Over to you guys.
Kia ora, councillors. Thank you for having us all here. I'd also just like to acknowledge two of the board members behind us, Lee and Liz. This report accompanies the Ōtorohanga District Development Board 6 monthly report against their work plan, and a full year report will be presented to council in August. It notes the total funding budgeted through the long-term plan 21-31, the additional funding request through the last year's annual plan, and the funding received from the Mayor's Task Force for Jobs to deliver the Community Resilience Program. Linking in Ross's item on the OTCP, staff and council staff and staff of the Ōtorohanga District Development Board will be looking to co-create their 23-24 work plan to incorporate priority projects and consider what, if any, additional funding will be required to achieve those. I'm happy to take any questions of my report before handing over to Lorraine and Elle.
Thank you, Nadia. Just probably that one type which I'm sure Elle's totally aware of on 4.5. Ōtorohanga District Council along with 22 other rural councils. I think you'll find that there's 30 councils in total. So just a bit of a correction of the numbers there. Just being somewhat pedantic, my apologies. Okay, not a biggie at all. It's just that obviously that's my baby, so.
Noted.
Right, over to you.
Firstly, big huge thanks for inviting us today to speak to our presentation. I'd just like, it has been distributed to everyone. You've had a good read, and I just ask that if there's any questions on it.
Councillors, over to you. Also, congratulations on your role, right, as chair of the development board. So I think it's the first time you've come to speak to us in your position.
So would that count?
Yes. That's right. Any questions, councillors? Yeah, personally, I have none. I just know that over with the initiation of the town concept plan, there is going to be quite an involvement from the development board. So the relationship that yourselves have through Nadia with the council is probably more important now than what it ever has been. And it is up to us to ensure that you have the capacity to deliver on projects. So as long as those open lines of communication are there and we can support each other, doing what we need for the community, we're in a good space.
Thank you, Max, for that, and councillors as well for the ongoing support. Our relationship with Nadia has been very open, honest, and as we work through the process, so we're happy to consider all of those aspects that we're given the responsibility for, and we track on.
And sorry, Councillor Jeffries.
I'll just think
Provide us
through you. Just one quick question around the district security and about the CCTV cameras. Is that comment there just to do with Ōtorohanga Township? There's nothing discussed there about anything needed out of Kāwhira.
Yes, I do believe, Nadia, you were included in that conversation. It was definitely initial, particularly with the Ōtorohanga Business Association and Jimmy. Yeah.
Yes, I can add to that, like Lorraine, through you, your worship. So at this stage, the project was really led by Sergeant Jimmy Walker, who engaged with the DDB around what could be done in Ōtorohanga Township itself. If there is appetite by board councillors to look at other areas, then we would need to have a further discussion about how that could be folded into the project. Currently, we have internal staff supporting, trying to obtain those quotes, which seem to be quite tricky to get.
Yeah, thanks, Nadia. I think it would be useful to have another discussion with Sergeant Walker, and as you're probably aware, we've had a number of issues in recent times at Tom French Grove and one or two other hotspots in the town there that aren't covered by security cameras. It would be useful to have those considered at least at some stage. Thanks.
From me, just a couple of questions. No, actually, first off, I'd like to acknowledge what you have done for the development board with the community resilience program over the last couple of years. Your input has been quite incredible in terms of what you've delivered and outcomes for our district and our community. So yeah, you've got me sweating on this one a wee bit. And I can only thank the person next to you for that. But that's but look, it's been really, really good, and it's put Ōtorohanga in good stead to continue with getting the great outcomes for our rangatahi across the district. So thank you so much. Lorraine, next thing, in terms of the relocation of the eyesight, can you just give us an update on how that's going? I know that the building has given you a few challenges.
To say the least, yes. So the staff were installed, if you like, relocated May, and started work operations in July, and really that's only the front of the building. And throughout the next few months, it was absolutely, the roof was leaking like a sieve. It was awful. So we're very, very grateful to the owner. A lot of the delay in putting a brand new roof on it, I think it just started maybe September, then it stopped, then it started again. And now it's completely finished. So for the past 3 weeks, that has been a huge part of my focus to get that. It's a building site inside. We've got the builders coming back on board on the end of this week. I think they're due in Thursday, Friday. And they're as anxious to get it fitted out as quickly as possible. Electricians have been, air conditioning people, the carpet people, and there's been, a lot of work. But I think we'll see some significant changes in the next few weeks. So in the meantime, we had to relocate Elle and her team, Kasana, to the business collector because that building just was not fit for purposes for their office space. So we moved the Elle and Kasana, and we're probably going to extend that. I really don't see, and this to be totally honest about it, finishing and completion until the middle of March.
Okay, thank you. I believe Councillor Johnson, you have a question.
Yeah, not so much a question, but just a acknowledgement, really. Just with the employment hub being very useful for at BT Home for sourcing staff, cooking staff, caregivers, that sort of thing. They've got a lot of benefit out of using the employment hub for that. So just want to acknowledge that and thank you for your work there. Also, just with regard to the Piston Festival, which is coming up on the 11th of March, have certainly had encouragement from Councillor Christensen on that, but I also want to acknowledge the eyesight for administering the funding and helping with promotion of that. So thank you for all that that input into hoping run a more vibrant event. So thank
you.
Thanks, Councillor.
Can I just say, Lorraine, and your group, the revitalisation projects, like just to see those first 3 shops painted, it's going to make the town look way better. I know there's a lot of work goes on in the background to get those things off the ground, but to get it off the ground, it must be pleasing. Well, it's pleasing to drive through the main street and see it, and now I see they're starting on another building. I think that's really going to change our town, and so thanks very much for that. Yeah, great on you.
Thanks, Rodney. Just to give you a tiny update on that, I know it's in the present here, but lots of the delays really was again weather. We haven't had a decent summer. The painters couldn't get a decent break at doing multi-shops with the bigger stores. From now going forward, there's approximately 12 lined up in interest just because of that visual 3 buildings. Sorry, my apologies. Am I fine?
Which would just begun.
Yeah. So it is huge interest and almost become infectious because we like those 3 buildings. So we've had so many names and they're really, really interested and wanting to opt into the project. So which is really encouraging.
Thank you. Any further questions, councillors? Nothing. Sorry, I'm just being really scrolling back to where I'm meant to be. Lost my place. Thank you. Really excited about the team you have, a new enthusiastic group around the table, and I'm sure you're going to have a lot of fun and get some outstanding results over next short period of time. So thank you for coming in and giving us a report.
Thanks, Max. And just on that, yes, we have got 5 new board members that are very competent, very savvy, and they're just really, really engaging. So we've taken over a little bit. Is that my time? At amount of time. That's right. Yeah, so we're very, very encouraged as we move forward.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay. So everyone, we have the staff recommendation here to receive the District Development Board plan and receive the Ōtorohanga District Development Board 6-monthly report. And we have received, move Councillor Christensen, second Councillor Williams, all in favour? Aye. Against, carried. Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you.
Right, councillors, we'll move back to item 21, road naming. Thank you. So handing over to Trish. Thank you.
Morena, I
Oh.
think Andrew's joining, isn't he?
Manager of property.
Sounds like you better not ask him any tricky questions.
Okay.
Good morning, elected members, and through you, your worship. I'd like to present the road naming report that's in front of you today for the proposal to name Wilshire Drive, Anderson Place, Rothery Place, and Craig Lane. So these two developments are in our Ōtorohanga area, one being in the Ōtorohanga urban area, and the three roads up in the King Country Development subdivision there. That report first went to the community board because it's within their geographical area. So we've included the recommendation from the community board in this report, which is to approve those three road names. There was a bit of discussion about the policy, and we can touch on that later. The second one is out on Kawhia Road, just out of the main town centre there. You'll be familiar with Ron and Bev Davis's property. A subdivision there, creating 5 additional lots, but they have a private right of way access to those lots. And under our policy, they're also required to name the private right of way access, and it requires a council resolution again to seal it. So they have put forward the name after their son who has passed away, Craig Davis. And the name they've asked for is Craig Lane. I'm happy to take any questions about the report.
Yeah, thanks, Trish. It did go to the community board, and there's quite a bit of discussion around the road naming policy, the timing of it, what was permitted under the consent for Tom Smith subdivision. And at the end of the day, it's come back to, we have a policy in place. There's certain consent requirements in place, and I think if anybody's read the report, there's probably enough detail in there to explain the circumstances. Is there any questions from councillors on what's before us at this stage?
I just have one question, please. Just curious. Down at Ron Davis subdivision, that road will actually be there. It's still a private road, and it won't be a public. But the Harper's Edward restaurant type, those roads get handed over, so they'll be council owned to maintain roads. But in the Ron and Bev Davis subdivision, would they be, like, the residents have to maintain their own road, or would it be a council road?
So through you, Chair, to answer that question, you're right. The development on Harper Avenue, those public roads are vested to council and will be maintained as such. The development on Kawhia Road, it is a private right of way on private land and will not be maintained by council.
Thank you for that, Trish. Nothing further, no questions?
Yeah, I've got one.
Sorry.
So you worship, I think, just so that it's on the record, about the road naming review. Do you want to add to that, Tanya? You were gonna, bring it to us or something
Yes,
later.
yes.
Yeah.
So a question was asked of me yesterday about the road naming policy. So we've kept the time frame on this deliberately vague. We haven't got a roading manager. We haven't got a person in the policy area to be able to undertake this work. We are looking at filling both of those roles at the moment, but I didn't want to put, we'll do it by the end of March or the end of June when we haven't filled those roles. What we have got, though, is a list of policies and bylaws that have been presented to council in the past that you've given us a sense of kind of priority on. And rather than just kind of banging this down the list as number 12, we thought we would maybe bring that back to you so that you can have a look at it, have a bit of a refresh on how that list is looking, reasons why some things might be further up the list than not, and then we can kind of make some calls on it then. So I've spoken to Andrew about that, and he's going to find that list and we'll get that. You have it. Oh, do you want to talk? I mean, is now the appropriate time, or would you rather? Yeah, okay. So what's on the list, Andrew?
So thank you, Mayor and councillors. So I did a quick scan of the list, and there's 4 policies and bylaws up for review in this remainder of this year. One of them is two of them are statutory policies, and one's a bylaw and one is a council. Sorry, 2 of them are bylaws. So 2 statutory policies and 2 bylaws. We've got top of the list. We've got our local Easter Sunday shop trading policy, which has to be reviewed. Probably not very contentious, that one. The next one is the local alcohol policy, which is due for its first review 6 years after adoption. There's a few issues with that one because hanging in the background is a government bill to amend aspects of the the Sale and Supply of Alcohol Act to stop large corporates clogging up the appeal process and restricting the council's ability to create and have a say on where new premises open. So we kind of have to wait the development of that act possibly before we act further on that one. We've then got our structures and work in public places bylaw, and always a one that gets lots of comment and feedback. We've got the liquor control bylaw for Kawhia Naia. So that's the list. I suppose in light of those ones, the naming of roads probably doesn't have the same priority as any of those ones. I know there's been a bit of a flurry of road naming of late, but I don't think that the development scene out there in Ōtorohanga is all that pressing, to be honest, unless we want to take the opportunity to catch up on a few private right-of-ways and roads and stuff that probably do need naming and a bit of a catch-up exercise. Tricia just drawn my attention to the stock movement bylaw, which is also overdue for review. But there's a bit of a logjam.
So if it comes to your attention just quietly, that there's another big subdivision proposed, let's put that up the order, eh?
Pardon?
If there's another subdivision proposed in the future, we'll make sure we've got things in place before.
Yeah, I think there's quite a timeline in there, isn't there? You know, by the time it's proposed.
Absolutely. So thank you, Councillor Dow.
Just on that naming, it's in Ross's plan. And for year 1 to look at naming protocol, investigation. So it's doubling up. It's kind of in here.
Rossi? The
It's
naming protocols.
Yeah.
So through your worship, that's a mana whenua led initiative. So it's come through mana whenua. And no, it's not. It's place naming. So it's a broader piece of work.
So, yeah. Thank you. If there's nothing further, thanks for that, Andrew. That the Ōtorohanga District Council resolved pursuant to section 319, part 1 of the Local Government Act 1974, that the following road street names are given to: 1, the North King Country Developments Limited subdivision on Harpers Avenue, Ōtorohanga is shown as the lots mentioned. An attached subdivision to be vested in council as public roads are named, Wilshire Drive, Anderson Place and Rodbury Place. And 2, the Ron and Bev Davies subdivision on Carpio Road, Ōtorohanga. All the particulars there: be a private right of way be named Craig Lane, and B, approve a review of the road naming policy to be commenced in 2023. I move on a second for that. Moved Councillor Hughes, second Councillor Dow. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you both. We'll now move on, councillors, to item 22, Ōtorohanga District Council Code of Conduct, and that is on page 83. Yeah. Okay, there you go. As my chief executive said, we'll take it as read. Are there any questions? Yes, Councillor Jeffries.
Just a couple of quick ones through you, Worship. 6.3, clause 6.3, where it talks about option 2, it says this would impact the investigation of alleged breaches. Can you just explain that? What's the difference between this policy and the old one in terms of that? Is there any change?
Through you, Your Worship. So what they did between the previous version and this version is they strengthened the clauses around what happens if there's a breach of the code of conduct. So if we reverted to the current one, then I guess it has less less steps to take and less focus on what you do if there's a breach of the code of conduct. Yeah, so I think it's just they've made it a bit clearer, but because often councils found that they kind of had nowhere to go. What do you actually sort of do if it happens? So there's been a lot of extra sort of suggestions in there around how you could mediate or work through a process. Yeah, should you need to.
Good, thank you.
Thank you, Tanya. So moving on to the staff recommendation that Ōtorohanga District Council adopt the Ōtorohanga District Council Code of Conduct, document number 676635. Move Councillor Jeffries, second myself. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 25, 2021-22 annual survey results or improvement plan, and that is on page 138.
Hello again. What page? So as part of the long-term plan process, council creates measures on which we assess our performance. Our current long-term plan has 5 questions, which I've noted in 4.1 of the report, that requires council to undertake a survey of our residents to seek their level of satisfaction. This opportunity provided council a platform to seek feedback on wider issues, services, assets and performance. You would have noted that we have a large margin of error in 4.5. This is due to the low numbers of participants for this, our very first annual resident survey in quite some time. It is a focus of staff to increase our participant numbers year on year, providing us with better data on which to make comment and implement improvement plans. A similar report was a similar report supporting the survey results was presented to council back in 20th September last year. And at that meeting, we indicated that we would present the associated improvement plan to the new council following elections. So this report has both the survey results and the improvement plan attached. I won't go through the improvement plan line by line, but I will note that on the right-hand column, where the improvements have been captured through other pieces of work and other work plans. I welcome any questions you may have of the report, of the results or of the improvement plan, bearing in mind that any specific questions on areas outside of my group, I may have to call on some other GMs to help me answer those.
Thank you, Nadia. Questions, councillors? Yes, Councillor Prendergast.
Through you, your worship, Nadia, great report and really interesting reading. Just a question for you really about the way people want to receive communication. I was quite intrigued with that, not involved with the West Trust and do the communication here.
Yeah.
And I was surprised at the low number that wanted to be formed via the Facebook. Yes, I was really surprised. And it's just very interesting. Has it altered the way you look at how you communicate?
It's definitely highlighted the need for us to look at specific pockets of our district and how we can better reach certain areas and certain demographics of people as well. So we are undertaking a communication and engagement strategy, and we want within that to be able to identify bespoke ways in which we can do communication in our district. I think one of the some of the value we have in being a small community in a small district is that we can do something bespoke. We can go to a community and say, look, what newspaper do we advertise to reach you? Do you read the newspaper? Is it that we contact, say, the local rugby club because they're the ones that push newsletters out throughout your community? So that's what we'll be looking to achieve through that strategy.
Councillor Williams.
Following up on that through you, worship, that's going to have to be important, given that in recent discussions, at least three of our wards have lost their newspaper circulations, and whilst community members have been told they can go and get one, that does require them to go somewhere and get one. It was quite a surprise, because obviously if we're still getting them, then we've not been aware of the fact that we're not getting one. I understand that people were informed somehow that they would no longer be getting one and where they could get one from. But it's been quite disappointing to understand how much of our wider area has lost that letterbox drop.
And through you, your worship, I think too, if it's a matter of us having to advertise in 3 different papers to get the entirety of our district, we just don't have the budget to do that. So we're going to have to be innovative.
Through you, your worship, just to add to Annie's comments, the King Country News no longer supplies our rural delivery, for example, and there's 100 boxes on that, of which I think about 95% of those would be in the Ōtorohanga district area, and that we weren't informed at all. It just ceased arriving. I'm very surprised and pleased at how the community is really upset. So it is a significant part of a lot of the businesses there. And what we've been told is that there are 4 copies available at the Lotto shop in Kiki. So for us, that's really no use at all.
Through you, your worship, I have asked our communications manager to do a stock take of the district of where and what papers are going where, that's so that we have a better picture of how we can, or where the communication is going or not going, might be the case. I certainly welcome having an offline conversation with ward councillors who are affected by this. We don't need to wait for a strategy to start implementing some really quick wins in terms of getting our news out there.
Thanks, Nadia. With two King Country newspaper representatives in the room, I'm sure they'll be going back and revisiting where the distribution is too. In terms of if you talk about doing surveys through the newspapers and that, and the reluctance of some to undertake Facebook surveys and so on, I'm unsure, and I'm saying I'm totally unsavvy with social media, but what are the other options? I mean, is it because those platforms are changing that the likes of Instagram has got a far greater following than Facebook now, or where are we?
Yes, look, I'm not that social media savvy myself, so that's definitely something we'll be looking for some greater clarity through the strategy. But in terms of Instagram, every time we post on Facebook, providing it has an image, it will automatically post on Instagram. But there are many other platforms, you know, YouTube is another very popular one. I don't know, it's probably a very long list that I'm unaware of. So that's definitely where the strategy is going to be helpful for us.
Thanks, Nadia. Look, I think we all enjoy survey results, be they good or bad. I mean, if the results aren't particularly good, we know there's work to be done. If they're good, then we know there's also still room for improvement. So for a council that hasn't been particularly good at engaging, perception is we haven't been particularly good at engaging with the community. It's nice to be able to get something back to us so we know what the general feel is. Any further questions, councillors? Thank you for your work in this space, Nadia. Appreciate it. We have the staff recommendation that Ōtorohanga District Council received a report titled 21-22 Annual Survey Results and Improvement Plan from Nadia Gower, Group Manager, Strategy and Community. Do I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Moved Councillor Prendergast, seconded Councillor Dow. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to item 26, financial report for the month ending 31 January, and that is on page 173. Thank you, Brennan.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Just bring up my computer now. Okay, yes, so I'm presenting the financial report to the end of January. So we obviously, since we didn't have a January meeting, we haven't done an end of December one. So the last one that you would have received was the end of November report at the December meeting. So there's actually a couple of months worth of movement in this one. Just moving on to the statement of comprehensive revenue and expenses. So there's a net surplus of 7.1 million, or just under 7.2 million at the end of the end of January. A large portion of that is because the second instalment of rates goes out in January. And so the income for that, even though we haven't received all the money, is recorded at the time that the invoices go out, which is early January. So obviously that has a significant impact. We've recorded a lot of income, but most of that will be spent over the next 5 months or less now. In terms of operating revenue, so we're down on budget by about 952,000, as I say. Subsidies and grants and other income being the two areas with the biggest variances. So subsidies and grants, again, is timing of road maintenance, as it usually is, in terms that's the majority of the subsidies that we get is the road maintenance stuff. Obviously, we all know what the weather's been like over the last month or two, so some of the work probably hasn't happened. We did just do a claim last week to the end of January, and that was another about 300,000 when we took out GST. So that would actually reduce that deficit, that variance by about $300,000. It gets us a lot closer. And then the other income is around user charges. So a lot of that's just timing of things like resource consents, building consents, that sort of stuff, particularly in the regulatory area. In terms of our expenses, so we're down by about 2.5 million, employee benefit and other expenses being a big one, other expenses being a catch-all, of course. Employee benefit expenses, as I say, some of that's to do with vacancies that we've budgeted for a full year, but we may have only just gone out to advertise. We haven't filled those roles yet. And also, the other point that I raised there was around the remuneration pool for the elected members. So I've actually had a couple of questions from you, a couple of members about that, because we're still waiting on the determination to be released by the Remuneration Authority. Once that's done, then we can do the back pay and sort out so that you're all being paid the correct amount going forwards. At the moment, with the exception of the mayor, who has a defined amount, everyone else is getting paid the minimum amount. And so we're just waiting on that determination, which I think is supposed to be end of February. So possibly next week's pay or the pay after, we're hoping. In terms of the other expenses, there's a lot of that's catch-all, asset maintenance, rating maintenance, activity operations. It's kind of across everything. There's no one. When I looked into it a bit further to see if I could write anything, there wasn't any one particular thing that was jumping out at me as being a significant underspend. It's fairly evenly split. On to the next page on our balance sheet. So as at the end of January, we've got an $8 million working capital. Oh, sorry, no, 6.2 million, 8 million of current assets, 1.8 of current liabilities. Again, that's related to the rates. So because the rates went out in January, but the final date for payment is this coming Friday. A lot of people don't pay till the last minute because they like council to not have the money for as little as possible. So, so there's usually a large outstanding balance at the end of January. But when we look at the end of February ones next month, you'll probably see that that balance will come down quite substantially, but our cash may have conversely gone up. And then just the last page, the combined cost of service statement. So again, just going through that. So our operating revenue is 3.4 under budget. So again, the subsidies is a big part of that. The other general sources, which is the internal charging for staff time. So again, part of that's driven by these vacancies that we have. Also the nature of some of the work that's being done may not necessarily be charged out somewhere. It could be a general admin type role. So yes, excuse me. There's that's what's causing that variance there. And so there's a corresponding part of that is a corresponding decrease in the operating expenditure, because obviously if the stuff's not being charged out, the income, the expense is also not recorded there. But then there's also other things like asset maintenance, as I talked about previously. And then in terms of the capital and loan, so we're about 6.3 million under budget. Now, this budget that's being reported in here is the one with the carryovers from last year. So part of that 6.3 is carryovers from the previous year, which was about 3.2 million, I think, off the top of my head. So that's making it look probably a bit bigger than it actually is. And then it's just a lot of that's around the timing of some of the projects. We've budgeted as much as we can, trying to say when the work's going to happen, but obviously circumstances, and particularly with the market as it is at the moment in terms of supplies and that sort of stuff, there can be delays that obviously created some issues there. And I guess Mark will have a capital report probably next month, so he'll probably go into more detail about a lot of that. Yeah. So that's the end of my reports. Any questions? Yes.
Probably looking forward to Mark's report next month to see what the alignment is, because it certainly seems to be all over the place. A bit hard to follow. Councillor Hughes.
Your worship, Brendan, how you going?
Not too bad.
Yeah, just as a matter of interest, what percentage of the rates are paid through like a direct credit and or a lump sum on the due date? Is there any rough idea about that?
I think in terms of percentage of people we have on a direct debit, it's around 30-something% now, I think. Okay. Yeah, so we have quite a few on direct debits now. There's been a bit of a, I wouldn't call it a push, but we've advertised, well, yeah, I suppose you could push. We'll put it out there a bit more to try and get people to consider going to direct debits. One of the things that Teresa, who's in charge of looking after the rates, does, particularly around people that have not paid, a bit less likely to pay in the past, is try and get them on a direct debit to help resolve the issue. And so that also allows us to control.
So how those direct debits worked in, say, through the year, with the collating or your financials? Is it taken at the end when it's due at the end? And
so when people sign up for a direct debit, they can pick how often they want to pay. So we do weekly, fortnightly, monthly, or on due date. In terms of the split, there's a lot. I guess if you looked at it number of people, there's probably a lot that are on weekly, fortnightly sort of things and monthlies. If you looked at it dollar wise, it's probably a 50-50 split, because obviously if you're only paying twice a year, the installments due, it's quite a big amount compared to, you know, some people are paying $5 a week sort of thing, or $10 a week. So yeah, there's a bit of a, so from a cash flow point of view, they both have their benefits for us. So obviously those people that are paying weekly, just mean you've got some money coming in all the time. Those that are doing big lump at the end of August and end of January, that sort of helps us, particularly the end of January one. It's coming at the time starting, end of February, sorry, January. We're getting a lot of those big bills from some of the roading projects coming through, so we have a big injection of money coming in as well, which allows us to pay some of those bills while we wait for NZTA to reimburse us. Yeah,
Cool. Thanks for that.
no worries.
Just following on from that, those ratepayers that have a direct debit that will clear their rates by the end of May. Yeah, then we flag them for no penalty. Whereas normally they would have to pay that second instalment by penalty dates on this Friday.
Councillor Jeffries.
Through you, Your Worship, thank you. Yes, just a request really. Are we able to at some stage get a report on our rate arrears situation, and also rates remitted, and just generally, are we able to get a report on our rating situation as far as collection and whether we've got any outstanding debt that is causing us any problems, which I doubt, but certainly I'd also be interested in the level of remissions that we get. So if we can get that information at some stage, then so we were actually considering doing a report on that to the next risk assurance meeting at the end of March. So we're putting something together about that. Go a bit more deep dive with the risk assurance committee. Thank you.
Sorry, anything further, councillors? If not, thank you, Brendan. We have a staff recommendation that Ōtorohanga District Council receive the report titled Financial Report for the month ending 31 January 2023. We've received and moved Councillor Jeffries, seconded Councillor Prendergast. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. We won't go into public excluded now. We'll move on to resolution index. And that is page 179. Thank you, Brendan.
So Your Worship, we just take this as read unless there's any questions.
Okay, thank you. And where am I actually at 179? Is there a recommendation that goes with that?
Yeah, that you receive.
Maybe. Right, sorry, found it. We have staff recommendation that Ōtorohanga District Council receive the staff updates on the resolution register. We've moved and seconded, moved Councillor Williams, seconded Councillor Jeffries. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Moving on to the councillor updates on meetings attended on behalf of Ōtorohanga District Council. Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, so I've not too much, just general stuff. Last week I attended a DLC training day, district licensing committee training day in Wellington, which was really useful, and with a few other district councillors, and just getting updated on current rules and running hearings, etc., like that. So just good to keep the saw sharpened there. Also, it was last week attended the Waipa water supply meeting to discuss the new reservoir which is coming up. Also attended the rural concept tender meeting, and yeah, and the other matter just to raise is the matter raised by a constituent of mine regarding the tree waste from in the Waipa Gorge. Just a matter I wish to raise, which I will follow up with in due course, but just to have a record of that. And the other one is all counting down now to the Piston Festival on the 11th of March, getting lots of interest there. And if you think that anything we've missed, get in touch with me. But we've got a car club coming up from Taranaki for it, and we've got a group of mini enthusiasts coming to it, just to name a couple. And I'm sure there'll be a lot more, but it's all go. The only probably not a hiccup, but it could be a good thing, is there's also holocross on the other side of the stop bank on the same day. So that's going to be interesting with some traffic there, but hopefully most of them would have gone in the day before. So been in touch with them. They're happy with it. We're happy with it. So we'll just have to see what happens. But otherwise, that's me.
Thanks, Councillor Johnson. Enjoy your time in your caravan.
I am.
Councillor Jeffries.
Sorry, just an update on things that have happened since our last meeting. On the 20th of December, we had a meeting with Tainui Kāwhia, which I think we may have talked about, but there were some concerns raised there by Tainui about the potential fire risk of the forest to the Kāwhia community itself. Though I gather that with the rain we've had in recent times, that's been alleviated to some extent. But also the alternative access way to Ocean Beach, should the access way from the boat ramp around to the along the foreshore around to the beach should be limited at any stage. So there's been some discussion around providing some alternative access and whether council has a role in that. I think that's still to be finalised. 2nd of February, we had a Kāwhia Community Board meeting, and I think probably as a result of that meeting and the subsequent discussions we had informally with the board members, there are some issues still around parking down by the boat ramp. And I guess in association with Te Taio Kāwhia's concerns too about beach access, whether it is timely for us to go back and have another look at the traffic bylaw that applies in Kāwhia. So that's coming up. On the 8th of February, we had that very interesting visit to Waikeria Prison, and thank you to all of those who were involved in organising that. It was a really cool day, and I had no idea that I was going to walk 4K in a pair of size 12 boots. And I was pretty knackered by the time I got home that night. So, but it was a very good day out. Yeah, very. And I just couldn't get over how huge that complex is and what they're providing up there. It was just mind-boggling. So thank you for that. On 10th of February, we had a Te Taio Kāwhia Moana meeting, just to let you know that they've actually formed a committee, and I guess the constitution has been finalised. They're going to become an incorporated society, so they can actually go ahead and raise some funds to fund their activities. And the alternative access thing is obviously still a topic of conversation there. I guess the concern that some of us have expressed is that the group has not yet at this stage taken its proposals out to the community. So we just don't know, well, the group doesn't know what sort of a response they're going to get from the community. They could have all the plans in the world, but if the community kicks it into touch, what's their plan B? So that was the question that was raised. last Thursday, we had a meeting with the DIA, and that was to do with Three Waters and agreeing on the level of net debt that is to be transferred across on the 30th of June or the 1st of July 2024. And there'll be some further reports coming to council through the Risk and Assurance Committee on that one. I also had a meeting with roading staff, and I just wanted to say, record my thanks to Mark and to Richard for resolving the Turatia Road matters that have been raised with me by Mr. and Mrs. Sellers on behalf of Mr. Tarr, and that's all been sorted. And but I did appreciate the staff input into that. I just wanted to comment very briefly on the concerns that I have about the dropouts and the slips on State Highway 31. The last one that you've probably all seen is a massive one, and I just don't know how long that's going to take to fix. It's huge, and I guess there are some concerns around the heavy traffic that continues to use that road, particularly the logging trucks. But also, should that road fail, what are our alternative access ways? And
so where's the exact location of that slip?
It's just down from the lookout.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And they have actually done some work there previously. If you have a look at the photograph, you can see the gabion baskets that are just hanging there at the moment, I think. And probably if it hadn't been for those, maybe the whole road possibly could have gone. So they've got a major task there to sort that one out. But I guess the concern that we have is that if that does go, where's the alternative access? And we're looking at possibly Okapata Road, which in itself is not in particularly good nick at the moment, coming out perhaps through Pekanui, otherwise coming in from Raglan, or alternatively coming through Waitomo Caves Tianga and out Harbour Road. That's another alternative. But I mean, none of them are very palatable. And but I do think that these climate change issues that we've been raising for some time are starting to kick in and taking effect on some of these things, and we do need to start thinking very seriously about upgrading some of these roads, perhaps at least one anyway, so that should the big bad thing happen, we do have an alternative access. So just raise that point. I just wanted to also acknowledge Waipa Networks, who were very proactive in providing Carfield with 2 huge generators. Each one was about half the size of a container, and they weren't asked, as I understand. Sean Horgan, who's the CEO, rang and just said, I've organised these and they're coming out to help you guys. And they kept the CBD area of Carfield going, so that all of the shops were able to continue trading, and the petrol station was able to continue operating and those sorts of things. So we do owe Waipa Networks a big thanks for that. And just wanted to acknowledge Callan Stewart, who's the Chief Fire Officer, and Kathy Shaw from Waipa District Council of Civil Defence for the work that they did too on over that period of uncertainty for the community. It did raise an issue in terms of communications during emergencies. When the power's out, obviously there's no landlines, and reliance on mobiles is only effective as long as the providers are still operating, which they weren't. So I did manage at one stage to, when the power did come on, managed to find a landline at the fire station that worked, and I was able to contact Day and talk to him about a couple of things. So I'm just wondering, in terms of our future planning, perhaps we need to start thinking about what sort of communication devices can we actually provide in terms of emergencies, whether it's a satellite phone or whether it's smoke signals or whatever it might be. But certainly the current situation is not tenable, and And yes, I just wanted to raise that as an issue for us to have a think about. So, and the last thing I just wanted to say is our hearts go out to all of those people on the other side of the island. I think we can say that we've dodged a bullet, and that what's happened on our side of the island it pales in comparison to what's happened there. And I was just looking this morning at the broadcast on Esk Valley, for example. That whole area there is an absolute disaster zone. I don't know how those people are ever going to get themselves out of that. So our thoughts are with them. Yep. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Prendergast.
I started the year in January with the meeting of the North King Country Development Trust. And then we've got this in order. Enjoyed our Waikeria prison visit very much, and the time that was taken with us as a group. Very impressed with the project that they've got there, and very much looking forward to seeing its completion. We had the Waikeria Prison Liaison quarterly meeting last week, I think it was. I've lost track of weeks at the moment. And that was, again, enlightening. They seem to be going along nicely with no real problems that council can help them with. Early February, I visited the Waipapa Dam Scenic Reserve just to follow up on reports of vandalism, freedom camping and fires, etc. being lit down there, but actually found the whole place looking pretty good, very tranquil and very nicely presented, very nicely kept. And no, I couldn't see any evidence of vandalism when I went around it. And just lately, I have been bringing around members of the Ōtorohanga ward, just checking on their welfare after cyclone to make sure that no one has been compromised too badly, and our whole area has really escaped pretty well in that realm of welfare. There's certainly been a lot of damage done, and there's going to be a considerable cleanup, but it was very much in pockets. It wasn't uniform across the area. But I do take Councillor Jeffrey's point of communication. I think for the first time ever, we had zero communication. There was no way to get out, and we weren't isolated and cut off like we were. But it is a concern going forward, and I think it needs to be noted.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you noticed earlier, there's been very few activities, and given the weather circumstances, many of them actually been cancelled or postponed anyway. So yeah, some of the delegation I was doing for you, a couple of those were postponed. I attended with Councillor Prendergast that Waikeria ODC update, and yeah, comment on just the general level of cooperation between the contractors and council staff, and it's really good. And yesterday took a care pack down to bulk lines, and yeah, with regards from council, the rooms are stacked to the hilt with stuff that's being loaded today. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Christensen.
I've had a few ODDB meetings lately, and just the community board and the prison visit. So yeah, not much.
Thank you. Councillor Dow.
Yeah, I just had Waikeria visit. It was quite interesting, quite a flash, but don't think I want to live there. So I'll be a good boy for a while. I've been to regional transport under the initial committee meeting for the new training. So yeah, just meet and greet almost, just a little bit of feedback there. Yeah, the people of this district, like someone put on Facebook to drop stuff off at OTL for nature people, which we found out about when people started turning up. Good on them. But anyway, but no, it was just amazing what people have been giving the community. Some people, I don't know if they've got a lot of things, money, but they were handing out things, and yeah, they've ended up filling 2 containers, plus they're talking about filling up a tipper truck just with, yeah. So yeah, it's massive. Thanks to the community. Last week I went and visited a resident from Cheeky Station Road who had a block culvert. Put a service request in for that. Never heard any more back, but I did notice on Monday it's all fixed. So obviously Mark might know more about that, but he's gone. Yeah. But anyway, he was quite concerned because it was flooding this place. Obviously we need to put bigger culverts in, which I know we've talked about before. But yeah, we were this area was quite lucky. I had 3 trucks parked in bloody stuck up north, couldn't go anywhere. One of them, the fella at Whangarei gave it a parking ticket. We couldn't go, like the roads are buggered. So anyway, I'll have to talk to the Whangarei District Council. That was a bit mean. Yeah, $60. So yeah. Anyway, they probably need all the money. I didn't know. Good old man's doing his job. No, thanks for that.
Thanks, Councillor Hughes.
Alrighty, so I attended the OCB meeting on the 7th of February. As Trish Ambry alluded to before, there's some interesting discussion there, especially over the place namings for the new development. So, but we managed to get through that okay in the end, once some explanation was done. The Waikeria visit the following day also, I must say, that was very, very interesting. Thank you, Kathy, for getting that around in Akaya. And yeah, I was just fascinated by it. Actually, it was a lot of money gone into it, of course. But other than that, not a lot's happened. I received a call the other day from a former district councillor, actually, who's down Phillips Ave. He had a sewage issue where the sewage backed up in the pipe and the raw sewage ran into his basement of this 2 of his rentals. So, but I've been following the email exchanges through between him and others, and hopefully that's been resolved. It seems to have been an issue, but yeah, and just to reiterate what Roy said before, I got a phone call also from about the tree issues out at Ōtorohanga. So just to make me aware, obviously. So hopefully we can get something sorted with that too. I spoke to Roy about it and see what happens there. I'd just like to acknowledge Tori from the Ōtorohanga Community Board for the work she's done for this picnic in the domain. She's put in a huge effort, and it's still kicking off this Friday. Unfortunately, I can't attend, but it looks like it's going to be a successful event. She's put a lot of hard work into it, so that's very pleasing. Just what you said before, Kit, about thinking of the people down the East Coast. My son works for a helicopter company, local helicopter company, and they were sent down on Thursday to Gisborne to help with sort of ferrying used crews, medical supplies, welfare checks and that sort of thing. And he rang me when he got down there on Thursday night and just said that the devastation you see on the television is nothing compared to what you see when you fly over that in a helicopter. And he said he was actually quite distressed about it. So it's for the people who are involved in that, it must be very traumatic. So the heart goes out to them. So other than that, that's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. Oh, somber note. Thank you. We'll move back to item 27, public excluded. So can I move we go into public excluded time of the meeting, please? Second, Councillor Jeffries, all in favour? Carried. Thank you, Andy. Thank you.